Hello! I'm going to be doing another little extra lecture for you about your reflective commentary for your major project. Now, those of you who took dark fictions last year, you will recognise an awful lot of this material because I'm using the same material in some places, but it's always useful to have a refresher. And for those of you who didn't take dark fictions, well, you've got the material now. I'm also going to talk through some of the guidelines that Chris Jones has put out about writing the commentary, why we do it, why it's important, and some stuff that you need to remember. Because even though you know all this, and you know that you know all this, tutors always get the same questions. So if it's here, hopefully, you will not be asking us the same questions over and over. Okay, let's begin. I also need to tell you that I have put this PowerPoint together from a number of other people's PowerPoints, so the formatting might be a little bit higgledy-piggledy, and I'm sorry about that. Okay, so, first things first. Be mindful of the conventions around submitting prose poetry in script. You will know these, your tutor will have spoken to you about how you format things, especially things like dialogue, how do you format a poem. If you're doing a script, you might be using, what's it called? Begins with a C, the script software. But be mindful of that, because things like this are incredibly important. Look at the submission date. The dates have moved because of the strike and because of the shutdown. So have a look at the latest email and hand in before 3 p.m. Now, I have said this to you a million times, but I'm saying it again. If you start uploading at 2:58 and the system crashes, that is on you. And I know it's an absolute but if you have a feeling that you're going to have problems handing in, or if you've got a dodgy computer or anything like that, take a screenshot of the time when you're submitting and do not do anything to the file, because if we can show that you haven't updated the file since before the hand-in time, it is so much easier. Okay. Word doc or PDF, please. If we can't mark it, you can't get marks. Simple as. So Word doc or PDF, please. Preferably a PDF, but it's up to you. And also be mindful of tutors reading your work. So, and I'm going to put it in here, and I know you all laugh at me for this, but please double space. Please, please, please. Look, these glasses, they are a ball ache. And please just double space. Double space! Now, Chris has put here, he would advise to keep a paper copy of the submission, perhaps bind it for a physical object rather than a memory stick. So that's something you might like to do, print it off, have your work nicely bound. I've still got my dissertations from my undergrad bound. It's something to think about. And I'm just moving this. Everything is double marked, blind double marked. So what we will do is we will mark all of your work, and then all the tutors are paired up. So we then mark some of their work as well, some of your work from their students, and then we have a discussion about the marks. So everything gets properly double marked, fully double marked. It's a long time-consuming process. It's one of the reasons that you get your marks back slightly later for your major project, but it's a really essential way of doing things. And so if you have any questions at all about marking, if you want to ask who is going to be marking, that information is available to you, so you will know your markers. And you can also ask for feedback from both markers if you would like. You don't have to, but if you would like. Okay, let's just move that. The rubrics that we mark you to are on Blackboard. They're under the Assessment tab on Blackboard. And we use both the standard rubric and the reflection and evaluation rubric. Now, you've been marked by these before, you'll know these rubrics, but if you want to have a look to see exactly what you're being marked on, that is where you can find that information. Now, some other things that you need to think about. Read through for typos. Or, even better, get someone else to read through it for you, because it's often very hard to find a typo when you're looking at your own work. Don't get too experimental. So, the suggestion here from Grace Jones is, do not hand in chapters 3, 13, 19 and 37. So we, that is the markers, we need to be able to really understand your manuscript in one read-through. And if you're writing a novel, something has to happen. So you can't have a novel in which not much happens. You need to be thinking about what's going to happen. So submitting the chapters where you do beautiful description, fab, but also including a synopsis. So if you're writing a novel, include a synopsis. We don't mark it, not strictly, but we need to know where you're going with your writing. And include a bibliography. Now this is with the reflective commentary, not the manuscript of the creative piece, but for the love of God, include a bibliography. It is so important to include a bibliography. And it's one of the things that you get marked on, and if you don't include one, you will potentially get marked down. And I feel like that's something I say an awful lot, but you really should know it by now, so there. Okay, we're going to think a bit about why we write reflective commentary. What is the point of this thing, and why do we ask you to do it? We ask you to do it because we want you to be able to show us being the markers, how you have grown and developed as a writer. How has your story grown and developed, or your plays or your poems? How has your work gone from initial germinal little seed of an idea into this thing that we have in front of us? And we want to know how you're editing, how you are working with other writers, feedback, all of that kind of thing. This is the place to put that. So, here are some quotations. You'll have seen these before, so Confucius, by these three methods you may learn wisdom, by reflection, by imitation, and by experience. So reflection is one of the ways of learning. You understand how you got something done. And one of the things that you are asked to do in your reflective commentary is think about whether you might do it differently next time, which is very important. And another quotation, I was potentially in a bit of a bad mood when I said this. You might as well think about what you've done, no one else is going to. Process isn't important when you've got a diamond. People don't want to see the sausage being made. Force them to. That's how we get vegetarians. Now I'm being glib, but you need to see the process of how something happens in order to understand that thing. So, understanding how you put together your novel, you need to be thinking about your process. Process is intensely important. And some examples of people who write about their own process, some that are very good, Stephen King, Margaret Atwood, some that are slightly less good, D.B.C. Pierre, Philip Pullman. But writing about the way that you write is a brilliant way of understanding yourself as a writer. So I've skipped over the Harry Potter quotation because blah. And this is the reflective practice, why bother? Another little potted thing, assessing growth, documenting struggles and successes. You know all this, but I'm reminding you just in case you're going through the, oh, why do I have to do this? You know it. You know why you have to do it. It's essential. And another thing is this is a type of autoethnography. So it's thinking about how your story connects to the cultural, the social, and the political. Okay. So this is information about the reflective commentary. It's 1,000 words. It's not much. And it mentions here what you've learned over the semester. That should be over the year. My apologies for that error. You're addressing the writing process, which includes influences on what you've chosen to write, where the ideas came from, and research. The process of revision, what worked, what needed changing, what you may still be less than happy with. And you need to show a clear-headed appreciation and understanding of your strengths and weaknesses. So if you are, in fact, really excellent at writing dialogue, you can say that. But you need to show me how you know this and why. Here is an example of the dialogue, and this is why it's good dialogue, that kind of thing. You should also show what reading you've done. And I've put short stories. Again, this comes from Dark Fictions, so apologies for that. So texts by other writers and also books on the writing process. This can also include anything at all if you listen to a podcast, if you've been watching films, if you're writing about the 1980s and watching The Goonies to get a feel for the decade. Anything like that, put it in the bibliography and explain why it's there as well. Here are some questions. I'm going to put this PowerPoint separately up on Blackboard so everyone can see it properly. But if you're struggling with what to write, you can answer some of these questions to give you an example of how you might go about it. So I'm going to leave these here, and then I'm just going to move this little box up so that you can always pause the video to see all of the questions there. And you can use these to give you an example of what to write when you're doing your commentary, if you're stuck. Okay, move that back down. A couple of other notes. Don't forget the word limit. It's an academic piece, so the tone should be academic, but you can use I. In fact, you're writing about yourself, so do. My personal grumble, I believe, I think, I feel, I don't care. It's an academic piece of writing. These are not academic statements. And preferably size 12, double spacing, any font that you're comfortable with. But as an example, this PowerPoint is done in Arial. It's very clear. Please don't use curls because, curls. Be consistent in your spelling, and don't forget to italicize or use quotation marks as needed. Okay, so some examples of chunks from reflections that may or may not be useful to you. So, chunk 1. Readers said it was slow, so I cut out some parts. Okay? Not necessarily a particularly helpful piece of reflection, because it doesn't tell us what was cut out or what slow means. So, better. Classmate X mentioned, and people agreed, the story dragged in the middle, so we know what's wrong with it, according to whom, and where. I realised that the tone didn't match the action, so there's the problem itself. I had wordy long sentences while my characters were running from the police. The sentence made the writing feel slow and surreal. Okay, so the problem has been highlighted, explained in more detail, and an actual example of what's wrong has been put there. And it wasn't what I was going for, so I trimmed the scene and changed some word choices. Much better. It would also be good to show some example sentences of what was removed and what was changed. Okay. Example 2. I turned it into workshop, unfinished. And people gave me some ideas for the ending, so I tried one, but I don't think it's working. Vague and confusing. How about, I tried X, I tried an ending in which all of the characters lived happily ever after, and it didn't work. So I tried Y, which might be a character leaving and other characters reflecting on their leaving, and tweaked that. So actually outlining the process of everything that you tried, how you tried it, and where it fits together. Much better. Now again, We've seen these examples previously from Dark Fictions, if you did that module. I'm not going to talk through all of these, but you can see the sections that I've highlighted, and this is all of these examples I have permission from the students to show them. The bits in black and in bold are the important chunks. So, inspired by, how the process was put together, if I had to do it again, problems run into, the tone of the piece. So this person has really clearly said what would they do different, what was good, what was bad. They've gone into a lot of detail, and they've given examples of where their ideas came from. Brilliant stuff. Got a 75. Ooh. More middle of the road, a 65. So you don't need to tell me the assignment. I know what it is because I set it. Push myself in terms of diversity. Good. Something that I thought would be a problem is writing in the second person. Revise the narrative. Positive feedback. All good stuff. Explaining the process. Talking about something that was believed before starting, and whether that was met or not met. Good. And then a final example, which received a 55, so again, still a solid mark. I had not done any secondary reading. Bold. I will not be including a bibliography. Bold. Issues that I haven't been able to do the work, but there's still some clear-eyed appreciation there, and I've struggled with formatting because I wasn't in lectures. Okay. Containing the creativity in large ideas proved difficult, so an awareness of what was difficult there. And then a final kicker, staring at the computer screen until an idea forms. Well, slightly glib, maybe don't be quite so glib, but this person still got a 55 because they are aware of the issues that were going on, they're aware of their process, even though it might not necessarily be the best process on the planet, and so they are able to suggest what they could do differently next time, and the general answer is not this. But you can still see where they are engaging with reflection to some degree. Oh, my apologies. Let me just go back. Okay. So one of the things that I noticed a lot of people struggle with is speech, formatting dialogue. And it's something that we've talked about quite a lot in different sessions. And I'm just going to give you 2 slides that will suggest one way that you might do that. The speech formatting guidelines. The easiest thing to do is pick up a published book and see how they do it. But one of the things that we find too much is attribution of speech. So here's an example, I got this offline, of bad speech. Yeah, Jack ran after Melanie, Arthur told us. Jack tried to get her to turn around. Jack ran down the street, calling Melanie's name, determined she'd listen to Jack's pleas one more time. Already, you can see, terrible, reads really badly. How might you change this to make it more understandable, clearer to listen to, and not so clunky and Jack, Melanie? Well, here's my very quick suggestion. Yeah, Jack ran after Melanie, Arthur told us. He tried to get her to turn around. Ran down the street calling her name, determined she'd listen. Arthur snapped his fingers, nodded. He'd get her to listen. He had that way about him. Melanie didn't stand a chance, not with him dogging her that way. So you can see I've indented the speech to show where there's new speech starting, and I've used pronouns and things like ellipses to suggest pause, because that's how people talk. And dialogue is particularly difficult if you're not good at listening to people. If you want to write dialogue the way that we might write as opposed to speak, you're going to end up with something quite clunky. And one of the easiest ways to do it is to record yourself reading it out loud and listen to it back, because then you'll hear where the clunk is. Another thing, when attributing adverbs. Oh, they paved the road to hell. I'm looking for a bank, she said worriedly. There's one, maybe 2 on the next block, he answered assuredly. She batted her eyes. "Would you walk with me?" she asked imploringly. Terrible. Over-attributed, and the adverbs make it blech. We don't need them. You can show that she's worried. Maybe she glances around herself. He smiles to assure her. "Would you walk with me?" The words itself implore. You don't need the adverbs. So thinking about removing the adverbs and doing something with the character's body, their facial expression, anything like that, removes the need for them and makes for more interesting writing. And of course, here's an example of particularly terrible written dialogue. Comes from one of the Twilight books. I don't know who Arrow is, but he laughed. Ha ha ha, he giggled. Terrible. Why not just have Arrow laughed? Overdoing it, it wastes words, it wastes the reader's time, and it lands you on Tumblr under the heading, the worst written line of all time. So be careful with things like that. And really, reading it out loud or getting someone else to read it out loud while you listen is a great way for editing dialogue. A couple of other points. Slang. Slang is difficult. Now, some groups do use excessive slang. If you're writing a teenager, you might like to use some slang that is quite age restricted or age bound. But bearing in mind that not everyone is going to know what you're talking about. So you're going to have to be quite careful when you use it. And using it in a way where the meaning is clear or where you can include some kind of explanation if needed can be important. Be careful of stereotyping and assumptions. So both can turn readers away. If you have a character who is of a certain ethnicity and uses certain words, of a certain age and uses certain words, that can be really unpleasant stereotyping. And the assumptions that makes, it doesn't necessarily look good on you as a writer, but it can also affect the way your character is seen in a way that is not important. 3 full stops in a row, an ellipsis, to denote a pause, or to denote someone who's thinking while talking. You can almost hear the ellipsis when I was talking then. You can see where the pause goes. And people pause a lot. So it's an important thing to remember. We don't speak in continuous speech. Read the dialogue out loud. I've just said that. And finally, be careful with swearing. Some people swear a lot. I swear quite a lot. But sometimes it is really unnecessary. Swearing not too much and then including a really resounding fuck can be very impactful. For a character who hasn't said much or hasn't sworn much especially, can be very impactful. And slurs are unnecessary. I think if you're trying to show that a character is the sort of person who would use a slur to show that they are a bad person or a racist or a sexist or whatever, you don't need to include the word itself. And I would not want to see that you were using slurs. That might be a personal preference. Other tutors might have other ideas, but I really do think they're unnecessary. So there are other ways to show that kind of character trait without using a slur itself. Okay, here's my questions GIF that I forgot to remove. Okay, we've come to the end. Some useful things for you to think about, some useful things regarding actually writing the commentary, how to put the thing together, and some of the questions that I get a lot around dialogue and dialogue formatting. The thing to think about is your tutors are still here. Even though we are all online and everything's being done virtually, we are still here. You can still contact us, you can email us, you can send us drafts, you can send us an email saying, "Oh my goodness, I cannot for the life of me remember how to do whatever. Help me." And we'll do that. We are still here. One thing that we do get asked quite a lot is about referencing. I know it makes a lot of people quite nervous. So when you go on the library website, this is, as you can see, library.shu.ac.uk. Help with referencing is right here. right here. So if in doubt, go to help with referencing, and they'll be able to, that section will have how to reference pretty much everything you need. If you are absolutely stuck, ask your tutor. We are still here. Just not literally, but we are still here. And we still want to be in touch. There's more information coming about what's going to happen with everything from supervisions to lectures. But at the moment, keep on top of your emails. Check things like this. Check the Twitter for the university. And if in doubt, if you are feeling unable to attend in person, don't. We are not going to penalise you at all for being unable to come into the university, so please don't worry about it. Stay safe, stay warm, stay writing, and stay excellent.